August 1968, Nui Dat Base, Phuoc Tuy Province. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb, SEAL Team 1, had spent 6 years turning himself into the kind of man the United States Navy liked to whisper about in hallways. Underwater demolition that left no ripples, halo jumps where the sky felt like a black ocean, close-quarters drills at Coronado until muscle memory replaced thought. He'd cross-trained with Green Berets at Bragg, run operations along borders that didn't officially exist, and worn 2 bronze stars on his chest before his 28th birthday. Webb wasn't a tourist. He wasn't a wide-eyed observer. He was a weapon with paperwork. And 3 weeks into his exchange observation with the Australian SAS, he did something that very nearly ended his career. He sent a classified cable to MACV headquarters, formally requesting permission to abandon standard US patrol doctrine. His commanding officer in Da Nang thought he'd lost his mind. His teammates back with SEAL Team 1 thought he'd gone native. The word native carried a sneer in it, like Webb had traded discipline for folklore. But Webb had seen something in the Phuoc Tuy jungle that made everything he'd learned at Coronado feel like theater. The man who changed him was Sergeant Colin Blackbird Dempsey, 5'8", a former abattoir worker from Adelaide, hands like rope, eyes flat and attentive. He moved through triple canopy jungle the way smoke moves through wire. Present, undeniable, and impossible to grab. Dempsey was the operator who'd spent 14 days stalking a single NVA battalion commander without firing a shot. The Australian the Viet Cong had placed a 50,000 piece bounty on. Dead only. Not captured, not interrogated, not traded. They didn't want him alive. They wanted proof he could die. And to understand how an American SEAL, decorated, experienced, proud, came to believe his own elite training was fundamentally flawed, you have to go back to Webb's first patrol with Blackbird's team. The night he learned that everything he knew about hunting men was wrong. 3 weeks before that fateful cable, everything looked entirely different. The Huey banked hard over Nui Dat, and Webb got his first look at the base that would quietly dismantle his entire understanding of warfare. It was smaller than he expected, quieter. Where American fire bases hummed with generators and screamed with constant radio traffic, Nui Dat had an almost pastoral stillness that put Webb on edge. Red dirt roads lined with rubber trees. Men moving with an economy of motion that seemed almost lazy, until you watched the eyes, the way heads turned slightly, the way conversations died the moment a stranger entered earshot. They weren't relaxed, they were conserving, like predators who didn't waste energy. The Australian task force had been operating in Phuoc Tuy province for 2 years, 2 SAS squadrons rotating through, maybe 150 men in country at any given time, less than a rounding error compared to American numbers. And yet the statistics coming out of this province had started whispering all the way up to places Webb wasn't supposed to know existed, kill ratios that defied explanation, casualty rates that felt statistically impossible. Someone at MACV had noticed, someone had asked, what the hell are the Australians doing? Those questions filtered down through layers of sanitized language until they landed on Webb's desk disguised as a routine assignment. Observe. Don't advise, don't train. Watch and report. Translation. The Pentagon wanted to know what these sheep farmers and factory workers from the bottom of the world were doing that America's best couldn't replicate. Australian SAS ratios were rumored to run anywhere between 50 to 1 and 100 to 1. Their casualty rate was the lowest of any Allied combat unit in Vietnam. 2 squadrons were doing what entire American divisions could not. Webb didn't like mysteries. He liked variables he could control. A figure approached across the red dirt. Short, wiry, sun-weathered skin, pale eyes that measured Webb with the unhurried thoroughness of a man appraising cattle. No salute, no formal greeting. Just that calm, assessing gaze. Sergeant Colin Dempsey, Blackbird. The nickname came from Aboriginal trackers who worked alongside the SAS, men who moved so quietly they seemed to exist between moments. They'd watched Dempsey adapt 40,000 years of hunting knowledge to the pursuit of human prey. They had a name for him that roughly meant one who moves through shadows. The Viet Cong had their own word, Maung, jungle ghost, and the bounty, dead only, proof, confirmation. A superstition wrapped around a practical fear. Webb saw only a compact man with calloused hands who didn't look anything like the operators at Coronado. No swagger, no performance of elite status, just competence so quiet it almost looked ordinary, until you noticed his gaze never stopped scanning, even mid-conversation, cataloging terrain and threat like breathing. The first words Dempsey spoke stayed with Webb for the rest of his life. You're here to learn how to hunt, he said. Everything else you think you know is theater. The briefing that evening shattered every assumption Webb carried about special operations. There were no terrain models, no acetate overlays, no discussions of fire support windows, helo LZs, or artillery grid references. Just Dempsey, 4 other men, and a hand-drawn map sketched by someone who had actually walked the ground. The patrol introduced themselves with minimal ceremony. Corporal Tommy Dulan, Aboriginal tracker, Yolngu people from Arnhem Land. His eyes held a patience that felt ancient, as if time moved differently behind them. Private Kevin Fitzgerald, red-haired, freckled, quiet. Private James Okonkwo, the radio operator, son of Nigerian immigrants who'd come to Sydney chasing opportunity. Corporal Daniel Morrison, a former jackaroo from Queensland, lean and watchful. They acknowledged Webb with nods that conveyed neither welcome nor hostility. Professional soldiers assessing a new variable. Standard recon patrol, Dempsey said. AO east of the Songaw River. Intel suggests an enemy supply chain in the sector. Duration indeterminate, minimum 5 days, maximum as long as required. Webb waited for the rest. The cascade of assets any SEAL op assumed as baseline. Extraction protocols, fire support coordination, emergency QRF triggers, nothing came. Dempsey's next line made Webb's spine tighten. Rules of engagement, avoid contact at all costs. A beat. If we're seen, we failed. If we're heard, we failed. If we fire a weapon, Dempsey's eyes held Webb's. We failed. Webb felt something shift inside him. This wasn't how American special operations worked. US doctrine rested on aggressive action and overwhelming firepower. You hit hard, you dominate, you extract. You didn't avoid contact, you sought it. What about fire support? Webb asked. The Australians exchanged glances. Something passed between them without words. We don't call fire support, Dempsey said, like he was explaining gravity. If we're in contact heavy enough to require artillery, we've failed so completely that artillery won't save us. Webb frowned. That's not. The enemy can mass a company on our position in 20 minutes, Dempsey continued. Fastest RT response time is 12. By the time rounds land, we're already gone or dead. Webb stared. So if you make contact, then we didn't do our job properly. The words hung in humid air. Webb thought about firefights he'd run. The doctrine drilled into him at Coronado. The idea that aggressiveness solved problems. None of that existed in this tent. These men were describing a world where the first mistake was being noticed. How do you get those ratios? Webb asked. 50 to 1, 70 to 1. How's that possible without aggressive engagement? Dempsey's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Because we don't fight fair, he said. We never engage an enemy who's prepared. We never walk into ambushes. We watch until we know patterns. When we decide to kill, we do it on our terms, with every advantage stacked. That could take weeks, Webb said, almost accusing. It can, Dempsey agreed. The Hobo Woods job took 6 weeks. Webb blinked. 6 weeks for one target? We followed a battalion commander across 3 provinces, Dempsey said, voice still flat. Watched him eat, watched him sleep, watched him visit his woman. When we moved, we eliminated him and his staff in one night. No shots fired. His battalion fell apart within a month. Webb stared like he'd been handed a language he didn't know how to speak. One night of patience, achieving more than months of American operations. It felt alien, almost offensive. But the numbers didn't lie. They stepped off Nui Dat at 0530 before dawn fully broke. No helicopters, no trucks. Just 6 men walking through the wire and dissolving into scrubland like ghosts. Webb expected to feel the difference immediately. He didn't. The first hour looked like disciplined movement, he recognized. Then they reached the jungle. The transition was instant. One moment scrubland, the next a living cathedral closing around them. Temperature dropped. Humidity thickened until breathing felt like inhaling warm cloth. Light turned green-gray, underwater. Dempsey raised a fist. The patrol stopped as one. Then he turned to Webb and motioned, "Watch me." What followed reshaped Webb's understanding of human movement. Dempsey didn't walk. He flowed. Each step was a decision made in silence. Touch ground with the ball of the foot, test, feel for anything that might betray passage, twig, shell, dry leaf, and only then shift weight. His knees stayed bent, center of gravity controlled, body low, balanced, utterly silent. Webb tried to copy it. His boot crunched. The sound wasn't loud in any normal sense, but in that jungle it rang like a rifle shot. Dempsey turned. No anger, just disappointment. "You're walking like you're going somewhere," he whispered. "Stop. You're not going somewhere. You're being somewhere. Every step is a destination, not a means." Webb tried again. Still sound. "You're rushing," Dempsey said. "You think slow is slow enough. It isn't. Watch Tommy." Tommy Dulan had moved to point, and Webb, trained, decorated, proud, watched an Aboriginal tracker do something he couldn't fully comprehend. Dulan didn't merely move carefully. He read the ground like Webb read a chart. Micro-adjustments with every step. Pauses that weren't pauses, but listening. Choices made based on information Webb couldn't even see. "My people have been doing this a long time," Dulan said later during a rest halt, voice calm. "How do I fix it?" Webb whispered. Dulan smiled, faintly amused. "You don't fix it," he said. "You unlearn it. Your training taught you to move through the world. I teach you to move with it." He picked up a fallen leaf. "This fell 3 days ago." Webb saw a leaf. Dulan saw a timeline. He pointed to another patch. "Those were stepped on. Curve is flattened. The jungle remembers everything. Your job is to pass through without leaving memories." Webb stared at the leaves. He could see no difference. "You will learn," Dulan said, "or you will not, and the enemy will find you first." At 1400 hours, Dempsey halted them with a different kind of stillness. Something in his posture changed, like a dog catching scent. They went to ground with supernatural speed. Each man vanished into cover in a heartbeat. Webb pressed against a massive tree, rifle-oriented, finger straight along the guard. Training screamed at him, identify threat, establish fields of fire. A hand closed over his wrist. Dempsey's eyes were inches away. "Don't move," he breathed. "Don't react. Whatever you hear, you are stone." For 30 minutes they lay motionless. Insects crawled across Webb's face. Sweat pooled in the small spaces of his gear. Muscles screamed. Then he heard it. Movement. Voices in Vietnamese. Careless, conversational. The soft clink of metal. 8, maybe 10 individuals passed 50 meters away along a trail Webb hadn't even noticed existed. existed. The sound faded. Still, Dempsey didn't move. 10 minutes, 20. Finally, a hand on Webb's shoulder. They rose with agonizing slowness. "Enemy patrol," Dempsey whispered. "Local guerrillas. Security for the supply route we're after." "We could have taken them," Webb whispered back. Dempsey's expression flickered, something like pity. "Yes, 8 dead enemy," he said. "And then what?" Webb frowned. "What do you mean? What happens after we fire weapons and announce ourselves to every hostile unit within 5 kilometers?" Dempsey asked. "After we compromise our mission for 8 men who are not our objective, what do we gain?" Webb tried to answer and realized he didn't have one that mattered. 8 fewer enemy, replaced in a week. A number in a report, not a strategic outcome. "So we let them go?" Webb asked, tasting the words like they were wrong. "We let them go and gain intelligence," Dempsey said. "Now we know their route. Their posture is casual. They expect no trouble. They don't know we exist. That is power." In American Doctrine, letting an enemy patrol walk by felt like failure. Here, it felt like superiority. By day 2, Webb began to understand what Dempsey meant by hunting. They found the first cache because Tommy Dulan read the jungle. Not a tunnel network, not a bunker entrance. Just a place where vegetation looked slightly wrong. Density, regrowth, the subtle youth of plants compared to the surrounding green. "Ground disturbed," Dulan said, crouched. "Plants growing back, younger, different shade. Someone dug here and covered it." To Webb, it looked natural. "To anyone who doesn't know what natural looks like," Dulan replied. "They uncovered rice. Hundreds of kilograms sealed in waterproof bags, enough to feed a company for a week." Webb expected Dempsey to mark it for destruction. Airstrike, quick win. Dempsey examined without touching. "There'll be more," he said. They dispersed supplies, 10 caches, 20, spread across kilometers. "So we call an airstrike and destroy half while they relocate the rest?" Webb asked. "No," Dempsey said simply. "We find all of them, map the route, identify who uses it, where they go, what they move. That could take weeks. It takes as long as it takes." Over 3 days, Webb watched the philosophy become reality. They moved less than a kilometer per day, stopped every few dozen meters to observe. Tommy read ground, leaves, broken twigs at certain heights, faint compressions of soil. They found cache after cache, rice, ammunition, medical supplies, documents, even a hidden weapons workshop. Each discovery catalogued, mapped, left undisturbed. They observed 4 enemy patrols. Each time they became stone as Viet Cong passed within meters. Each time Webb fought the urge to engage like fighting an itch you're not allowed to scratch. And something else grew in him: recognition, respect, a sick admiration for the effectiveness of this quiet cruelty. On day 4, they found what they'd truly been looking for. The structure was invisible until they were practically standing in front of it. A bunker cut into a hillside, covered with natural vegetation. Even knowing it existed, Webb struggled to see the entrance. More important, it was occupied. Dempsey spotted guards first. 2 men with AKs so well concealed, Webb needed seconds to resolve them into human shapes. Not casual guerrillas, too disciplined. "NVA," Dempsey whispered, guarding something worth guarding. For 6 hours, they watched, motionless. Couriers arrived carrying document cases. Supply handlers moved in and out. At dusk, a radio operator extended an antenna and transmitted for exactly 4 minutes. Then, at 1800, a man emerged that made Dempsey's breath catch. Older than the others, 40, maybe 45. Same black clothing, but different carriage. Unconscious authority. Guards straightened. The radio operator hurried. Others appeared to receive instructions. Dempsey signaled, "This one matters." "Who is he?" Webb whispered. "I don't know yet," Dempsey said, "but I intend to find out." They withdrew at 2200 and established a harbor 2 kilometers away. "That's not a supply point," Dempsey said in the dark. "It's a command node, comms, couriers, security layers. Someone important operates there." "Then we call an airstrike," Webb said. Reflex. "Eliminate." "And kill how many?" Dempsey asked, quiet. "Maybe destroy the facility, maybe kill a deputy, maybe miss the real man. And we learn nothing. We capture no documents, no frequencies, no contacts." Webb swallowed. "So what do we do?" "We watch," Dempsey said. "We learn. We don't take the quick shot, we take the right shot." That could take weeks. Dempsey's eyes reflected faint starlight through canopy gaps. "The battalion commander in Hobo Woods took 6, he said. "When we moved, we eliminated an entire command structure in 1 night. His unit collapsed." He leaned closer, voice barely a breath. "You're not fighting a war," he said. "You're hunting." And then, like it was the simplest truth on earth, this isn't a war. This is something older, something your technology can't touch. Webb's transformation happened over 11 days. 11 days of silence, patience, a slow dissolution of everything he'd been taught to believe about speed and dominance. He learned to read the jungle, not perfectly, but well enough to notice what he used to miss. Broken twigs at shoulder height, disturbed leaf patterns, soil compressed by weight. The jungle remembered, and Webb learned to stop leaving memories. He learned to move the way Dempsey moved, not by copying technique, but by adopting mindset. Stop thinking about destination. Start thinking about presence. Every breath controlled, every step deliberate. He learned to wait, real waiting, predator waiting, the kind that doesn't feel heroic heroic or cinematic, the kind that feels like dissolving yourself into discomfort until the world forgets you exist. On day 6, Dempsey explained the psychological dimension. The Viet Cong know when we've been in an area, he whispered. Not because they see us, because they feel the results. A courier who left never arrived. A cache that was full is empty. A commander alive yesterday is gone today. Webb thought about American psychological operations, leaflets, radio broadcasts, programs designed in air-conditioned offices. The Australians had found something simpler. Results that couldn't be explained. Disappearances that couldn't be predicted. Fear spreading through enemy networks faster than any message. On day 8, Webb witnessed efficiency he didn't know was possible. They had identified a small enemy logistics team. 3 men moving supplies along a monitored trail. The decision to engage was made silently through hand signals. What happened next took less than 15 seconds. 3 figures in darkness. 3 enemies who never knew death was among them. No gunfire, no shout, just brief, controlled struggle. Then stillness. The Australians searched bodies methodically. Documents, maps, anything that revealed networks. Then they withdrew, leaving the scene for others to discover. Later, Dempsey said, "Americans measure success by enemy killed. We measure it by intelligence gathered." Those 3 dead men told them more in paper and patterns than they ever would have alive. Their documents mapped routes. Their notes revealed contacts. Their absence would create confusion for weeks. Webb felt the sick logic lock into place. This was not war as America practiced it. This was disassembly. On day 11, they executed. The command node had revealed itself over days. Schedules, guard rotations, courier cadence, radio windows. The older man was provincial level, coordination across multiple channels, a target that justified risk. They moved at 0300, 5 men flowing through darkness toward an objective they knew intimately from watching. Webb had asked once more, "Why not call in an airstrike?" "Airstrikes are imprecise," Dempsey had answered. "We might destroy the facility, might kill people, but we wouldn't know what we accomplished. Convenience over certainty." The operation unfolded with mechanical precision. Security elements neutralized, entry achieved, objectives located. The details of what happened inside that bunker would remain classified. Webb would never speak of them, not in official reports, not in private conversation, not in the decades that followed. What he remembered was the silence, the absolute perfect silence of men trained to work in darkness without sound. The efficiency of movements rehearsed 1,000 times. The cold professionalism of soldiers doing necessary work. They were gone before dawn, kilometers away before the enemy realized the node had been cut out of its network. No shots fired, no air support, no radio chatter. 5 men eliminated a target American intelligence hadn't even identified, captured materials that would keep analysts busy for weeks, and disrupted enemy operations across an entire province. "This is what hunting looks like," Dempsey said as morning light seeped through green canopy. Not noise, not firepower, not dramatic confrontation. He glanced at Webb. Silence, patience, precision, results that actually change things. Webb didn't respond. He was too busy rebuilding his entire internal map of warfare. 3 days after returning to Nui Dat, Webb sent the cable. Formal request, permission to modify patrol doctrine. US approach optimized for conventional engagement. Australian methodology demonstrates superior effectiveness against irregular forces. Recommend comprehensive review. He expected anger. What he didn't expect was how fast the response came. 4 days later, a full colonel arrived by helicopter. Clean uniform, hard eyes, the smell of headquarters still on him. "Chief Webb," the colonel said, "your cable has caused significant concern." Webb stood at attention. "You understand that requesting permission to abandon standard doctrine borders on insubordination?" "Sir," Webb said carefully, "I believe the methods observed warranted consideration at higher levels. That's why I submitted through channels." The colonel stared like he was evaluating whether Webb had become a problem that needed containment. "Tell me what you observed," he said. "Tell me why you believe American doctrine is inadequate." Webb took a breath. "Because we're fighting the wrong war, sir," he said. "We try to win through attrition, body counts, overwhelming firepower. The enemy adapted. They don't mass where firepower can reach. They fight a different war. We haven't learned to fight back. The Australians have." The colonel's jaw tightened. "You're asking the United States Navy to acknowledge sheep farmers are better at our job." "No, sir," Webb said. "I'm asking us to acknowledge they found solutions to problems costing American lives daily." Silence stretched. Something shifted behind the colonel's eyes. Not agreement exactly, but a recognition of inconvenient truth. "Your request is denied," he said finally, "but I will include your observations in my report." He leaned closer. "Document everything you learned. There are people who need to read it, even if they can't officially act." Webb's classified report ran to 147 pages. It was filed under compartmentalization so deep that most of the men who needed it never knew it existed. But something changed anyway, quietly, like water cutting stone. Elements of Australian doctrine began leaking into American training. Longer duration reconnaissance, emphasis on infrastructure targeting, integration of indigenous tracking, patience as a weapon instead of a flaw. Webb returned to SEAL Team 1 different. Some men respected the new stillness in him, his refusal to chase contact, his obsession with patterns. Others thought he'd lost something essential. Webb didn't argue. He'd seen something that couldn't be unseen. The best warrior wasn't the man who moved fastest or shot straightest. The best warrior was the man who had already decided how his enemy would die and was willing to wait. Colin Blackbird Dempsey was killed in 1971, 3 months before Australian withdrawal. Officially, enemy action during routine patrol. Unofficially, something else. He had been tracking an NVA colonel across the Cambodian border, 40 kilometers beyond support, hunting the way he always hunted. His body was never recovered. The Viet Cong never claimed the kill. Among Australian SAS, some believed he had simply walked into the jungle and never come back, that the bush had finally claimed the man who'd spent 4 years becoming part of it. The bounty was never collected. Tommy Dulan returned to Arnhem Land, back to country that had taught his ancestors everything about tracking and patience. When young men asked about Vietnam, he would shrug and say he spent a few years teaching white men to walk properly. And some of them learned, he'd add, almost amused. Webb retired in 1979. No memoir, no interviews, but in 1987, when the Navy established a new tracking and surveillance course for SEAL candidates, the curriculum contained methods that smelled faintly of red dirt roads and rubber trees, of Aboriginal patience and Australian silence. The instructor who designed it was a retired chief petty officer in San Diego. He still had an Australian SAS bush hat. Sometimes, late at night, he would take it out and remember the man who told him the American way wasn't wrong, just designed for a different war. Decades later, after the towers fell and America went to war again, a new generation of operators rediscovered the same lessons in different mountains and different deserts. They learned again that firepower alone could not defeat enemies who refused to stand and fight. Some of them knew where those ideas had come from. In 2006, a retired SEAL commander found Webb's report in digitized archives. Read all 147 pages. Tracked down the author, now in his 70s, living in San Diego with a view of the Pacific. They talked for 6 hours. If we'd listened back then, the commander asked, would it have changed anything? Webb was quiet for a long time. We would have killed more of the right people, he said finally, lost fewer of our own, understood the war we were fighting. He looked down at his hands that still remembered moving like stone. But would we have won? He murmured. That was never the question. The question was whether we were willing to learn from people we assumed had nothing to teach us. The commander waited. Webb exhaled. The answer was no, he said, and sometimes it's still no. Americans like learning the hard way, by doing it wrong first. Is there another way? Webb's mouth twitched, half bitter, half sad. There's always another way, he said, but it requires something we've never been good at. What? Humility. Webb's last visit to Australia was in 2014, 82 years old, thin, slow but sharp. He went to Adelaide first, found the neighborhood where Dempsey had grown up. The slaughterhouse was gone, replaced by a shopping center. But Webb stood on the spot, eyes closed, trying to imagine young Colin learning knife work that would later translate into silent competence. He visited the Australian War Memorial in Canberra, stood before the Vietnam exhibit reading names of men who never came home. Dempsey's name wasn't there, listed as missing in action. Webb thought that was appropriate. The jungle ghost never confirmed dead, just gone, absorbed back into the darkness he'd learned to inhabit. Finally, he went north to Arnhem Land. They found Tommy Dulan's community, found the old man himself, 93, still alert, eyes still holding that ancient patience. They sat beneath a eucalyptus tree. Two old men who shared something impossible to explain to anyone who hadn't felt the jungle breathe around them. Dulan spoke first. You learned to walk properly in the end, he said. Webb smiled. Small. You taught me? Dulan shook his head. No, I showed you. The jungle taught you. Same as it taught my grandfather. He looked out over red earth. Your people want to conquer everything, he said. Land, enemy. You think if strong enough, fast enough, with enough guns and machines, you can make everything submit. He turned his gaze back to Webb. But some things cannot be conquered. Some things can only be learned. Webb swallowed. Do you know what Colin said the last time you saw him? Dulan's eyes softened. No. He said hunting was the only honest thing he'd ever done, Webb said. Everything else, the war, the politics, lies, and stories. But the hunt was true. Hunter and hunted, alone in the bush, nothing between them but skill and patience. Webb hesitated. Do you think he found what he was looking for? Dulan was quiet for a long time. Then he said, I think he became what he was meant to become. Not soldier, not killer, something older, something the land remembered, even if we forgot. Webb frowned. Your people had a word for that. Dulan nodded. For ones who walk between, who move in spaces others cannot see. What word? Dulan smiled faintly. No translation. Closest your language has is ghost. Webb died 6 months later in his sleep, in his San Diego house overlooking the Pacific. He left no family, just boxes of papers and a worn Australian bush hat no one knew what to do with. 2 weeks after the funeral, the SEAL commander received a package. Inside, Webb's classified report and a letter in shaky script. I spent 50 years trying to teach what Dempsey taught me. Most didn't want to learn. They wanted confirmation the American way was the right way, the only way. But some learned it, some understood. Maybe in the end that's enough. If you ever train young operators in old ways, patience, silence, the understanding that hunting is different from fighting, tell them where it came from. Tell them about a man called Blackbird who disappeared into Cambodian jungle. jungle. Tell them about people who learned to walk properly 60,000 years before we learned anything at all. And tell them the deadliest warrior isn't the one with the biggest gun or the fastest helicopter. It's the one willing to wait. The commander framed the letter and hung it where every young operator would see it. When they asked, he told them the story. The story of an American who learned to hunt. The story of an Australian who taught him. The story of a war that might have been different if only someone had been willing to listen. In the jungles of Phuoc Tuy province, vegetation has long reclaimed the trails men once walked. Caches are gone. Bunkers have collapsed. The war ended and the jungle did what it always does. It swallowed the evidence, but sometimes late at night people there still say they hear things. Footsteps making no sound. Movement in darkness leaving no trace. A sense of being watched by something that isn't really there. They tell children stories about jungle ghosts. Men from a country at the bottom of the world who learned to walk the way ancestors walked. Men who moved through triple canopy like smoke, who appeared and disappeared without warning. Children ask if the ghosts are still out there. Elders shake their heads and say the war ended long ago. The jungle reclaimed everything, but sometimes when the moon is dark and the wind dies down, even the elders aren't entirely sure, because some things once learned are never forgotten, and the jungle remembers.